everybody. Thank you for tuning in. You are watching the Inside Method podcast, where we go behind the scenes of a global consultancy. And today I'm very excited to introduce to you Tim Morey. It's Timothy, but you go by Tim.
That's right.
One of the things that we really like to do here is just give everyone a chance to get to know the folks on our team, just what makes them tick outside of work. And we're going to get to a lot of business questions, I know. But I think it's important that people get to know who you are outside of work. And there's a lot to get to know. You've been going on what you call your listening tour to all of the different studios. One of the things that we're excited about is you taking over the role as head of Method. Now that Joe Ryan is stepping aside, we're going to miss him. We love Joe, and he's done an amazing job, but excited for him to have time to spend with his family.
That's right.
But we're also excited to have you as part of the team, knowing all of the experience that you bring with you. And so thank you. Thank you for being here, and excited to get to talk a little bit more.
Yeah, it's been really fun to get to know the company and to visit the different studios and teams and meet people and really listen and learn and kind of absorb the routines and stories of the firm. It's been a real pleasure to do that with Joe. So the two of us have spent a lot of time together, transitioning. And I think it's, as of yesterday, we officially handed over operational control. And then Joe's supporting me through the end of the month to if I have questions or if things come up.
Yeah.
And then we'll be supporting through the end of the year as well in a consulting capacity. So it's been a wonderful, nice way to transition and to immerse myself in the company.
Before, we're going to get into some more work-specific questions
Yep.
a little bit later. But one of the things that we like to do on the podcast is just give everyone a chance to get to know our teammates, what really gets them excited outside of the office. One of the things that we say all the time is we believe everybody is a nerd about something or some things in their life. For you, what lights you up? What are you passionate about when it's not work related, when the laptop shuts down, when you're not in the office? What absorbs your attention?
Sure. So I had kids just at the end of going to grad school part-time. My wife and I actually went together. We have different surnames, so our classmates didn't always figure out that we were a couple. But because my daughter was born just at the end of that period, which was 2006, I felt like for at least a decade and a half, I was a full-time employee, with a job that kept me super occupied, and a full-time dad. And my partner also works. So we did a ton of adventures with our kids. We're a very outdoorsy family, so lots of hiking and as the kids got older, water sports, kayaking, running. In the winter, we ski together. And that was a wonderful and intense period. Many Methodites are parents of young kids, and I think they can probably relate to that your own hobbies and interests sort of get shunted aside for that decade, and you're just absorbed in trying to be a good parent and be a good colleague, a good employee, a good member of whatever firm or business that you're part of. And I've actually been through a pretty interesting transition in that. So when my son hit 12 or 13, and I think around the same age, maybe a little earlier for my daughter, they sort of came to me and said, "Dad, we like hanging out with you, we like doing adventures, but our friends are cooler. We want to have time to do things with our mates." And so suddenly I had time on my hands again,
Mm-hmm.
and I
now you have to figure out what am I going to do?
This?
What is this? What do I do with this now?
Yeah, and so since that time, I sort of rekindled, some of my hobbies. I did a few more mountaineering adventures. I would read more extensively. I used to sort of snatch reading on airplane rides during the takeoff and landing period, but now I had more time for that.
Yeah.
I've sort of rediscovered, I guess, some of these dormant activities that had been put on the side.
I want to get into some of that because one of the goals that you'd set for yourself was to get above 6,000 kilometers, right? Meters, sorry. 6,000 kilometers.
That would be high.
That would be really high. 6,000 meters. You accomplished that goal. I was wondering if you could share a little bit about what was the trip, but then two, why was that so important for you to take on?
Sure. So let me start with the trip. I went to Nepal in November of last year. And so I spent October, half of September and most of October training. walking up hills in the Bay Area and in Lake Tahoe and in Yosemite with a giant backpack filled with water. And then when I get to the top, I pour out the water and hike back down. People must have thought I was mad in big mountaineering boots. And then went to Nepal and signed up with a New Zealand guiding outfit called Adventure Consultants, who connected me with Dajongbu Sherpa was my guide. And we climbed 3 mountains that were around the 6,000 meter, 20,000 feet mark. One was called Lobuche East. It's often used as an acclimatization peak for people going into Nepal. And then the second was called Pokalde. It's a little less snow, more kind of rock scrambling, which involves some high altitude camping. That was just wonderful. And then the third was Imsa J, which is also known as Island Peak, which is called a trekking peak. It didn't feel all that different from Lobuche, so I don't know what the difference between a trekking peak and a climbing peak is. But all of them, by hook or by crook, I managed to summit. And
I know you said you've trained for us before, but previous to this trip, had you done anything similar to this?
I've been mountaineering. I've been a mediocre rock climber my whole life, and I've done quite a bit of snow and ice, but with ropes and sort of how you cross glaciers safely. I've climbed in Japan, in the Pacific Northwest, and in California. But this was harder and higher than anything I'd ever tried. And which brings me to goals. It's a rather arbitrary, but I just wanted to know, how I would do at 6,000 meters.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I want to go much higher. I don't feel an urge to go back and climb even bigger Himalayan peaks necessarily, although, it could be fun. But I tried twice before, once with my wife in Peru and once with a group of friends in Nepal. And both times, because of weather and conditions, we didn't quite make it. So it was just nagging. And when I found I had the time and I really wanted to do something to sort of change of scenery and unwind from what I had been doing professionally, it just felt like the perfect window.
Yeah. Then you had some time, like you said, to focus on it. And I have to bring it up because I had a good chuckle when you brought up one of the things that you did as a result of this trip was you wrote a blog article around some of the things you observed and experienced, and I think this was on.
It was on LinkedIn.
Yak trains. Is that, or is this a separate one?
Sure. I wrote a short article on Yakonomics.
Yakonomics. That's what it was.
The economics of the Khumbu Valley. It's on LinkedIn if you look me up. I also wrote just a blog post, sort of a trip report, as it were, which I put on LinkedIn, and it got massive traction. It's had over 100,000 views. It went absolutely viral. I think people are intrigued by the idea of sabbaticals. I would encourage those listening, that if you find a moment in your career where your family circumstance and finances and jobs all line up to take a break,
right?
It's a wonderful thing to do. And so I think that may have resonated with people, which is why I don't have 100,000 connections on LinkedIn. so
but I had to laugh because my wife was formerly a news anchor, and it never failed. Like, she would put all of this time, all of this effort into crafting these investigative packages, and she would post these things on social media, and they would get a little bit of traction. But she would post any video of one of our daughters, and it would just explode. And you're just going, what is happening here?
Yeah, I've had the same experience with thought leadership. Some of the most thoughtful, in-depth pieces I've worked on with colleagues and teams of colleagues. You get decent traction, professional interest, and then a random rant that I put together in an evening with a glass of red wine in my hand and emotion in my heart, and it just goes viral.
Yeah.
So you can never control.
We're just doing the work wrong. Maybe we just need more wine. Yeah, that'll fix everything.
I think you'd also ask me about goal setting. So I find, for me personally, setting these sort of audacious goals, something slightly harder than you can do, pushes me to try harder and do more. And so I've set a number of them. The other one was also physical in running. I wanted to do a marathon in under 4 hours. And if you're a club runner listening to this, 4 hours is not terribly fast. People my age routinely do 3.5 or.
Yeah.
But I had 6 or 7 goes, and I could never do it. It was always 4:10, 4:08, 4:15. And I finally read a bunch of blogs and spoke to more experienced runners who explained to me that, you have to take on more nutrition. You have to eat while you're running. You have to suck down goo and other, you can't, at the speed I go, which is not terribly fast, you just can't, nobody can run that long without nutrition.
Yeah.
And so in 2016, I think it was, I finally did a marathon in under 4 hours. I did it in 3 hours, nice. 59 minutes and 12 seconds.
Hey, you got it done.
And I haven't run a marathon since. I've only done halves.
Yeah.
But I think those goals in my life have sort of helped me push myself to try harder.
One of the things that caught my attention was as you were sharing your story with the company, you were talking about how the importance of creating quality digital products and experiences for people. To do that the right way, we first have to understand that not everyone is the same. The world is not the same. And that's something that we've talked about with a number of the episodes that we've done. But I think it's easy for people to pay lip service to that and not actually have experienced it in an in-depth manner. And I bring this up because one of the things that you shared, why this was so important to you, was your upbringing and kind of the experience you had being a bit of an outsider. And I was wondering if you could share a little bit about how did that come to form as a result of your experience growing up?
So I think to be good at building products and services and experiences for people who are not like yourself, you need empathy.
Yeah.
And some people are just naturally empathetic. But I also believe that you can be trained in empathy, or you can put yourself in situations that enhance your ability to empathize. And I think the first step in empathizing is to understand that the world looks very different to different people in different countries, in different socioeconomic categories, in different lifestyles. But it's very easy to forget that, because I think we mostly live in bubbles that we create and nurture for ourselves. And as a result, deliberately sort of forcing yourself to be in situations that make you a little uncomfortable, that take you into a different place, I think it can help you become a better product manager, a better designer, a better engineer. But I've always found or observed that people who are bilingual or bicultural, who grew up in a different place, sort of have that understanding because of their upbringing, and that was certainly my case. And so, I was born and raised as a kid in Japan, but not in Tokyo or Osaka or a big city. I was deep in the countryside of Nagano Prefecture, and we were the only non-Japanese family who lived in that town. At the time, this was in the 1970s.
So not only the only white family, but just the only family that wasn't Japanese.
Yeah, there was in fact, we were so rare, they made a local TV show at one point, and there was a Nepali family who had come, and they were running a restaurant about 30, 40 miles away, and there was us, and that was it.
Oh, wow.
Now, today, if you go to that town, Japan has globalized like much of the world, so foreigners are still relatively rare, but you would see English teachers and some factory workers from other parts of Asia. But this was in the 70s, where it was just very, very uncommon. So everywhere I went, people would stop and point and say, "Look! There's a foreigner," and that was the background noise of my childhood.
Yeah.
And as a kid, you just accept things. You
this is just normal.
This is the world. This is the way it is. But even as a small child attending the local elementary schools, I was aware that my family was a little different. We had different traditions, a different diet, a different language at home, and so you just got a sense and an understanding. And I think I moved to the UK when I was 11, and then I've lived in Asia and other parts of the world since. I think I took that sort of sense with me that, the world looks very different to different people. And even when I moved to the UK, now I looked like most, or the majority of UK. Of course, UK is a multicultural, a multi-ethnic society today. But, I looked like the majority for the first time in my life. But inside, my thought processes, my reflections, my experiences, things like kids would talk about TV shows at school. I'd have no idea. Movies that had come out in their childhood, celebrated moments like the first Star Wars movie, completely passed me by. And so I always had this sense of somewhat being an outsider. And I think professionally that has helped me because as a strategy person in a creative firm or as somebody designing a product for people very different from myself, I have that ability to empathize and understand that the way I see the world may not be the optimal way for this experience or product or service we're trying to build.
There were a handful of things that you said that jumped out that just felt like such a good cultural fit with a lot of the things that we have said on the podcast and that we have spoken within town halls and everything. And one of the things that you had said was that you would describe your leadership style as one that persuades and influences rather than commands and controls.
Yeah.
And I think why I'm interested in that is because we are a company of consultants. We are not short of very strong opinions. And so I think it's easy sometimes to think that command and control is what's needed and it's necessary so that we can move quickly. Why have you taken a different approach?
Yeah. So as a young person, as an angry young man, I had sort of a rebellious spirit. I wasn't the best kid in school. I think my children are probably aware of that at this point. And so, poking at authority has always been part of who I am.
Yeah.
So if you spend your life sticking it to the man, what do you do when you are the
man? Yeah.
Yeah. When you're in a leadership role, and I think the best and the positive thing I can do is to reflect back on who I was and try to be the kind of leader I would have wanted to work for. And I've been very fortunate in my career. I've worked for some absolutely wonderful leaders who put people in the right positions and then gave them the freedom to run their project or piece of business, whatever it was, nurtured them in the right way, but gave them that freedom to experiment and iterate and learn.
Yeah.
And so that's what I try to do, and that's what I mean by persuade and influence and sort of nurture as opposed to command and control. I also think the business world we live in today has a degree of complexity where it would be very hard, however talented you are, however brilliant you are, to be the person who has the best ideas and who can effectively command and control a firm.
Yeah.
So I do make some exceptions. I think there are, again, in the product world that we live in, if you do everything through consensus and committee, you end up with a mushy, weak product. So I do think it's important to have a design intent or a strategic intent in a product, in a service, in a business that's driven through and it's clear and it's not watered down. And those decisions can be difficult, and I think team members need to disagree and debate and then commit to that. But by and large, when you think about a firm like ours, where we have a lot of sort of talented designers, engineers, product managers, project managers, data scientists, they know their craft and they're very good at that piece. And so I think it's the role of a leader in those organizations to corral those people and steer them in the right direction and get people to follow that idea rather than dictate from above.
Yeah.
And when you can do that and you do that effectively, people feel great about their work. They feel that they have the right degree of autonomy, and then they take responsibility for their work.
We have a parent company, Global Logic, who has a huge footprint in India. And we also have a great relationship with Hitachi, who has acquired Global Logic out of Japan. You've in your past life in business, you helped set up offices in India, and you obviously spent quite a bit of time in Japan. This seems like a no-brainer, right? Like this makes really good sense.
I'm glad you thought so.
Yeah. But I think what I was intrigued by was I would have to assume you had a lot of opportunities to consider once you decided to come back into the business world. So what was it about method that piqued your interest enough to come back into the business world with us?
I think there's two questions in there, but let me answer first the why method, and then also how it all fits together. The creative consulting or digital product industry that we're part of has been through tremendous change in the last decade or so. And starting in the 2000s, with Accenture acquiring Fjord, my former company Frog was owned by a parent company, was Aricent, an engineering services firm, and then funded by KKR, the private equity firm. A lot of these independent creative consultancies and product design and product engineering companies have been acquired, and by all kinds of interesting suitors. So there's a group within there of engineering services companies. There are management consultants. There are systems integrators. And it's been an interesting challenge because the cultures of these firms are very different. The types of people they employ, the philosophies that they take to everything from how you work with clients through to what an office space should feel and look like are very different. And I think lots of smart and well-meaning people have tried to put those pieces together in an effective way. But I'm particularly drawn to the combination of a product design, product engineering, product strategy, and a product innovation firm and an engineering services firm. And the common bond that those firms have is that we're makers.
Yeah.
We make things, we want to see things in the world. And so even though engineers who are scaling products have a different vocabulary and a different mindset from people further upstream, more to the left side of the product life cycle, doing the innovation work or the business model design or the experience of the product through to MVP. We speak different languages, but it's not, it's never trivial to get those teams to work together. But the ones who have the best chance, I think, are the ones who are rooted in this philosophy of making. And that really drew me. Yeah. And, I have lots of friends in the industry who work in all different types of flavors of this firm. But we've all had similar challenges, and I think the best possible option is this combination. So the fact that Method is part of Global Logic, an engineering services firm, was very attractive. And then, of course, the fact that Global Logic is part of Hitachi and sits within the Hitachi digital organization was personally attractive to me because it ties back to the Japan connection. That was part of my early career and early life. Which brings me to that sort of second piece of how does it all fit together. If you had said to the 20-year-old philosophy student in Scotland, Tim, that one day you will be leading a product engineering and design firm and living in Silicon Valley and being in business, I would have thought you were nuts.
Yeah.
There was just no way that was a trajectory. And I recently heard Kevin Kelly has published a new book and sort of life advice. And he had a brilliant line in there about, in your 20s, go and do the craziest thing you can think of. Don't do the most lucrative thing. Don't do the thing that would please your parents because it's the right career choice.
Okay.
Go and pick the most random, seemingly fun, but utterly irrelevant to your future career thing. Go do that.
Yeah.
And I hadn't heard that advice at that age, but I spiritually was there, and that's what I did. I went to Japan. I taught English for a while. I studied Japanese. I ended up getting this job in government. I worked for a local government office in Aomori Prefecture in the north of Japan. And all of that, seemed to have no relevance. But through that process, I met my wife, who was Canadian and American, so we ended up here in the US. I ended up in Silicon Valley. Through that, I ended up going to business school, got hired into a tech firm. All these pieces sort of happened fortuitously. And I've been lucky in this trajectory.
Yeah.
But now when I look back, I can draw a path that, now I work for a firm that's owned by, is part of Hitachi. And so I have an understanding of my colleagues, and I can speak to my Japanese colleagues. Likewise, a lot of the early part of a product lifecycle is facilitation. And, I was a teacher for a while. I know how to run a classroom. It's really not that different running a workshop for senior executives of a company than it is to organize a classroom and run activities for language students, adults and kids. So all these pieces tie together. Could I have drawn a path from where I was to where I am? Absolutely not. But looking back, I draw on all those experiences.
When you were sharing a little bit about yourself in one of the town halls, my ears perked up immediately because you said something that I think myself and a number of other people have said some variation of. Mm-hmm. You said it's important that we take our work seriously, but we remember it's just work. And I think I've always said, and a lot of folks around the company have said, we want to take our work seriously, but not take ourselves too seriously in the process.
I like that.
So that's immediately what I thought of. And so I guess as we've been talking, you're somebody who's clearly has an extensive knowledge of the industry. You've carried yourself through a number of different roles within different companies. How do you specifically, balance that mindset of being a very deep thinker in your craft, taking your work very seriously, but also being able to kind of step back and just remember it's just work? Like, what does that look like to you? Because I think that's a statement we can say, but not really know how to live it out.
Yeah. I was asked by a former colleague from Mexico City a question around, how do I get the amount of things I get done. And I didn't really have a good answer at the time, but I thought about it a lot later. And so I'm giving her the answer now, which is I think you have to have a degree of enjoyment in the work. So, not every part of my job is fun and games. We get HR escalations that can be painful to deal with, or, challenges with a project, or, things can be hard. But on a fundamental level, I look at what we do and what we get to do. We get to build innovative new things with our clients. We get to work in sort of nice environments with talented, smart, interesting colleagues. And so I get a lot of joy and satisfaction from the work. It doesn't really feel like a grind.
Yeah.
It's on the balance a lot of fun. And I think that is the first key piece. And it goes back a little bit to what we were talking about earlier. How do you find your path? There's no clear directive. There's no book. There's no website that can show you that. But when you find that thing, that craft, that skill, that role, that job, that gives you that sort of joy and satisfaction, I think that then really helps for you to immerse yourself deeply in it. And I realize we're very privileged in the kind of work we do, right? Yeah. Not everybody around the world, and perhaps not even everybody listening to this, has that freedom to either explore or the fortunate circumstances to get that kind of work. But for those who do, I think that's the first trick. And then the second, and I like the way you phrase it, to sort of take the work seriously, but not yourself, is to create these moments and times to decompress and have fun, or to take your mind off. And for me, I run. So I live at the foot of the Santa Cruz Mountains. At least 3 days a week, I traipse off into the woods. I typically don't listen to music or podcasts. I'm alone with my thoughts, and I listen to the trees and the nature around me. And, that puts me together again.
Yeah.
We're even though we think we're cerebral creatures, we're biological entities. Body and mind is one. They're tightly interrelated. I think more and more science sort of demonstrates that. And oddly enough, some of my clearest, or my moments of clarity, come when I'm not thinking about work. I've rarely had a moment of clarity with a spreadsheet open or a presentation deck open. I tend to have those thoughts when I'm out running or doing something in nature. And so I think building those breaks are really important.
Well, I think it makes you better at your job. For me, at least, I echo a lot of what you're saying, where if I have long stretches where all I'm doing is grinding, just trying to get things across the finish line, but I haven't taken time away to just replenish myself, I can with a pretty high degree of certainty, I can look at the work that I put across the finish line and think, I probably could have made that better if I had just hit the brakes a little bit. And refueled a little bit. Let myself just rest and kind of re-energize.
Yeah, absolutely. I think those perfectionist tendencies can be used for good, but you can also kind of overdo that.
Yeah.
And then I think a third and final lesson I've learned is to spend time, look around, sort of smell the roses, enjoy the people around you. When I left my last role, I must have had 60 or 70 people reach out, and I did one-on-one hour-long calls. My wife was teasing me. She said, "Your new job is, keeping up with people in your network, friends and people who had just worked with a little, but who were kindly sort of reaching out, and that really makes it special.
Yeah.
That when the work is said and done, when the app is delivered, in 5 years it's going to be replaced by something else. What we're left with is the people, and what is the impact? How did we touch their lives? Did we help somebody? Did we nurture somebody? Did we have a friendship that was treasured by all? And so of course it's work, we get that, but in every job I've had, I've come away with relationships with people who have remained friends.
Yeah.
And I think those 3 things or 4 things are really what makes it fun for me.
Well, and I think that's speaks volumes too. And you can walk away from something and it's not just a hard cut, and you've severed the ties with the company, and with that comes severed relationships with everybody. When that transition happens, but the relationships still continue to stay in touch and they continue to pop up in your life, that's a testimony to the impact that we can make on the people around us, which, to your point, I think is ultimately what really matters. As you've gone on your listening tour, have there been any big takeaways?
Sure. I think a few things have stuck out to me. First is that the firm is fundamentally kind. And I picked this up in the interview process. But I think a kind culture, begets creativity, that people can take more risks in an environment where they feel that people around them are supporting them and building them up. Yeah. The danger is that it gets too mushy, that people won't provide critiques of each other's thinking and ideas. But that culture of not being a jerk, and if someone is a jerk, there's consequences. That has been a consistent theme. And so, whether it's hanging out in Denver with the team there, or here in Charlotte or in New York, I just get this sense of a supportive, energized, creative community, and I think that's important.
Yeah, that's great.
Particularly, it's a great environment to work in, and it's important for the work. Second thing is an openness to experiment with the model, and we haven't really talked too much in this discussion about the evolving business model of consultancies like ours. But as digital fluency and the use of design tools has permeated corporate America and corporate world, frankly, over the past decade, the level of sort of maturity and understanding of our clients has vastly increased.
Yeah.
And so the kinds of things we could show up with 10 years ago, a design thinking tool set and some wonderful facilitation around sort of getting ideas out is inadequate for 2023. And you have to take ideas forward. You have to move more quickly. You have to get to making sooner. You have to get closer to code. Those sorts of principles, I think, are ones that I see Methodites embracing and experimenting with. Even the fact that we have more people in our firm working shoulder to shoulder with clients than we have teams that go off and work and then come back and reveal to the client. And even our project-based teams are working tightly alongside our clients. And that's appropriate for today.
Yeah.
Our clients, many of them worked in firms like ours. They know the tools and techniques that we're using. They have a degree of fluency and understanding. So the openness to do that is encouraging, because that's not true of all firms. And I think it's the direction the industry will evolve in. But I sense an openness and willingness to try different methods and to focus on what clients want from us. And as an industry, I think that's an interesting challenge that will continue to evolve.
Right.
And then third and finally, it's just this culture of making. And it exists in our parent company, but also in ours. The question ought to be, yes, but did it ship? Did it get into somebody's hands?
Yeah.
Because if it ends up as binderware, if it ends up just as a innovation theater, if it ends up as theory, that really doesn't help the end users, the people who, employees in companies who use the tools that we produce, or the consumers in the various markets that rely on the products and services that we design together with our clients.
Yeah. As we wrap this up, I know a lot of, we've talked a lot to the employees, but to the client side, anything that you would like to share with them as we get ready to move forward with this next season of Method?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've more or less completed my listening tour on the inside of the firm.
Yeah.
And just today, actually, I started the outside-in view. So I had an hour-long discussion with a client on how they experience Method, what they want from us. Are we evolving our offerings and services and capabilities in the right direction to suit them and their emerging needs? And I'll be doing more of those, and I hope to meet with many of our clients to make sure that I get that outside in perspective of the firm as well. But I think what I can say is that all the things you love about working with Method, about our flexibility and our collaborative nature, the caliber of people that we bring to you, all that will remain a constant, and that I look forward to building, sustaining the success that Method has had, and sustaining the service that we've provided to you, to our clients, in helping you take your initiatives forward.
Great. Well, Tim, thank you. We really appreciate you taking the time to share your story. It's been great to get to know you a little bit better.
My pleasure. Thank you for the opportunity, and I look forward to working with everyone.
Thank you.